We don't always get to see the type of personality that Law really has under his exterior, and the reason for that is because of the amount of walls that he's put up around himself over the years, and it makes sense when you've seen where he's come from. He grew up very well off, and then all of a sudden one day, everything was just taken from him. Overnight, he ends up losing everything: his home, his family, his friends. His entire world burns, so that's what he wants to do to the rest of it. It's why he seeks out Doflamingo. It's why he decides to join the Don Quixote family. When he first presents himself to them, he just said, I only have like 3 years left to live, and I want to use that time burning the world that burned mine. This is something that allows him to be completely manipulated by Doflamingo. One, he is a child who has just lost everything, and two, this is what Doflamingo specializes in: taking people who are already in terrible and desperate situations and molding them to fit whatever he needs them to. Unlike a captain like Luffy or Whitebeard, the Don Quixote family don't serve Doflamingo out of some sort of mutual respect. They serve him out of this idea of necessity, because it's through manipulation. And Law, especially as a kid, succumbs to this manipulation, and it follows him till this day. During Dressrosa, when he actually confronts Doflamingo, he's scared. He'll never let that show, because on the exterior, he's not going to allow himself to show any, overwhelming emotion unless he's incredibly frustrated. But go back to the scenes where he's with Doflamingo one-on-one. There's several times where he just hesitates on things that normally he would have done instantly. It's not until he has someone backing him up, like Luffy during their extended fight, that he's able to maintain focus, and he's able to understand that I can rely on somebody else in this instant, because he's not alone with the person who's had so much of a grip on his life up till this point. Back when he was a kid, we see cracks of his personality actually starting to show when he forms an actual bond with Rocinante. At first, he was just frustrated and lashing out because he couldn't understand why someone was doing this for him, until he finally heard the words that he had to say. Here you have a child who has been scarred by the world, and no one ever asks him about that pain. No one has ever acknowledged that pain that he's in. Until Rocinante, where he starts crying over him because he understands that every time they go into a hospital and people are just afraid of them because of the Amber Lead syndrome, which was government propaganda to try and cover up the fact that Amber Lead was poisonous to the general public, but not contagious. After Law hears that, he starts to show that he is more caring than he lets on. It's just this idea of him needing to be jaded in this world that was so cruel to him starts to fall when he's in the presence of someone who actually understands what he's been through, or at the very least has been taking the time to consider what he has been through. But when he gets older and he loses more people around him, when he loses Rocinante, he falls back into that idea of, I need to be closed off. But that's not entirely the case, because you can actually see semblances of his personality reflected in his crew. His entire crew is full of goofballs. Granted, they are very capable at what they do, but for the most part, they're just really silly. They'll banter with each other, they'll panic, they'll laugh. Law keeps his composure during all of this, and they understand when their captain says something that they need to follow orders to a T in order to be able to get out of whatever situation they're in. But for the most part, in their downtime, they're just all hanging out, and you can see that Law is very comfortable around these settings, because this is something that he wants. And the walls that he has put around himself, that's something that the Straw Hats easily see through. So when they make an alliance with him, at first they're a bit off-put because of the fact that, he is a warlord at this point in time, and he's also one of the worst generation. And he's asking them to fight an emperor, but when they actually start to, sit down with him, they can see right through the exterior that he's putting on, because at one point or another, the other members of the Straw Hats were like this. They had walls of their own that they put up, and so when he's, on the crew with them temporarily, and he just sees Luffy going off on these extreme antics, they all could just kind of go yeah, you're just gonna have to get used to that. When he's trying to be serious like he is with his own crew, they don't pay him all that much mind, or they'll listen to him, but they're not gonna go too in detail on what they need to do when they get somewhere, because they know that Luffy's just gonna go off vibes, and they're trying to acclimate him to this situation. On a fundamental level, they understand what he's been through. They may not know his story, but they understand the place that he's in currently. And you see that the longer that he's with them, he's actually forced to tear down his own walls in order to just properly communicate. It's one of those little things where I think Sanji was making, I think it was pizza or sandwiches or something, and Law just screams, "I don't like bread." The only person who was thrown off by him saying that was himself because he didn't realize that he lost his composure in this moment. But that was the only way to, like, actually articulate what he was feeling. Actually saying it rather than trying to hide it between, like, some sort of broody exterior. He'll never admit to it, but he does genuinely enjoy being in their company. Yeah, he gets frustrated, but he's actually able to show emotion. That's not something he was able to do since Corazon, really. And I think that's really interesting when you take into consideration the kind of captain that Law is, because he is the captain in charge of all the goofballs. But with the Straw Hats, he is just one of the goofballs, or he has to be in order to actually get through what he needs to. If he wants to lay out a plan that no one's gonna follow, he has to make sure that he's actually being heard. He can't pull rank because that's not his crew. They're just in an alliance. So he's forced in a situation where he's surrounded by people who do understand the things that he has gone through, but he can actually talk to them on an equal level. And when we see him act as a captain to his own crew, we can see why they choose to follow him, why they are so, like, ready to take action whenever he says so, and it's because he's the comfort that they seek. Again, he's got a crew full of goofballs. We don't know exactly, like, the entire backstories of his crew, but it's clear that Law, like, is this sense of stability for them. They can act however they want in the background, but the moment Law says something, they all understand that I put my complete faith in my captain here in order to get us through any situation. And for the most part, it works because Law knows how to coordinate. He knows how to run an operation. When given all of the pieces on the board, he can come out with the best strategy. That doesn't always necessarily say he's going to win, but he understands the best route to take. I don't see Law, like, necessarily expressing himself on the same level as someone like Luffy, but I do see him taking steps towards being able to articulate his wants and his needs on, like, or I guess in a healthier way, and a dynamic that actually allows him to, move forward in ways that he never thought possible before. It shows his development as a character, but it also leaves a lot of room for growth as a person. I don't know, I hope that made sense.